My name is Tori Barrett, and I'm 29 years old. I remember the exact moment I realized my family had never actually seen me. Not really. It was a Tuesday morning in late May, and I was standing in a rented auditorium in my dress uniform, scanning the rows of folding chairs for a familiar face. Parents were hugging their kids. Grandmothers were crying. Phones were raised in the air, capturing every second. And I stood there, diploma in hand, completely alone in a crowd of 400 people. If you truly love and appreciate your parents, take just 1 second to subscribe to this channel. It means a lot to us. And before you go, tell me in the comments, which country are you watching from? Nobody in my family came to my basic training graduation. Not my dad, Gerald, not my mom, Sheila, not my older sister, Renee, not my uncle, not a single cousin. I had sent them the date 3 months in advance. I had called, I had texted. My dad told me he was proud of me, but that the drive was too long. My mom said she wasn't feeling well. Renee never even responded. I stood on that stage and shook the commanding officer's hand and told myself I wasn't going to cry. I didn't. But something inside me quietly broke that day, like a hinge giving out after years of holding too much weight. I had joined the military at 27 after spending years trying to find solid ground. I'd worked 2 jobs through community college, paid my own rent since I was 19, and never once asked my family for money. That wasn't because we were close. It was because I knew better. My dad, Gerald, had always had a talent for making you feel like his love came with a price tag attached. Growing up, praise from him was rare and always followed by a request, a favor, a loan he'd never pay back, an errand framed as a test of your loyalty. I learned early to keep my distance emotionally, even when I was physically present at Sunday dinners and holiday tables. But I had invited them to graduation because I was proud of myself. That was the real reason. I wanted them to see just once that I had done something hard and finished it. I wanted to look out into those seats and see my dad's face and feel like maybe this time it was enough. Instead, I looked out and saw strangers smiling at their daughters. And I drove myself to a diner afterward and ordered a stack of pancakes and ate alone by a window and told myself it was fine. I was fine. 3 weeks passed. I was settling into my new assignment, adjusting to the routine, rebuilding myself the way you do after a long emotional hit. Then my phone buzzed. It was my dad, not a call, a text. And I remember reading it twice because I genuinely thought I had misread it the first time. He wrote, "I need $8,000 for your sister's wedding, your family. This is what family does." No congratulations. No apology for missing the graduation. No acknowledgement that weeks had passed without a word. Just a number and an expectation wrapped in the language of obligation. $8,000 for a wedding I hadn't been properly invited to, from a man who couldn't be bothered to drive to watch his daughter graduate from military training. I sat with my phone in my hand for a long time, about everything I wanted to say. So I thought about the years of showing up for people who never showed up for me. I thought about that auditorium and those empty seats and the pancakes I ate alone, and then something in me went very still and very clear. I opened my banking app. I sent him exactly $8. In the memo line, I typed 2 words, best wishes. I put my phone face down on the table and went to bed. What happened next is the part that still feels surreal when I say it out loud, but every word of it is true. And before I take you there, I need you to understand something about where I was at that moment. I wasn't angry. I was finally, for the first time in my life, completely done. The morning after I sent that $8, I woke up to 43 missed calls. Not an exaggeration. 43. My dad had called 17 times before midnight. My mom had called 9 times. Renee had called 8 times. Numbers I didn't even recognize had called after that, which told me the family group chat had been activated. And relatives I hadn't spoken to in years had been recruited into whatever storm was brewing on the other end. I made myself a cup of coffee, sat at my kitchen table, and scrolled through the missed calls the way you scroll through a news article about something happening in another country. Distant, detached, like it had nothing to do with me anymore. Then I listened to my dad's voicemails. The first 2 were calm, confused even. He asked if I had sent them by accident. He asked if I meant to send more and made a mistake. By the 3rd voicemail, his voice had shifted. He said I was being disrespectful. He said I was embarrassing the family. By the 6th voicemail, he was using a tone I remembered from childhood, that low, controlled anger that used to make my stomach drop when I was 12 years old, sitting at the dinner table. He said I had no right to mock him. He said, after everything he had done for me, this was how I repaid him. I sat there listening, and I kept waiting to feel something. Guilt, fear, that old familiar urge to fix it, to call back and apologize just to make the noise stop. But it never came. I just felt tired and clearer. I called my husband, Reed. We had been married for 2 years, And he knew my family history the way you know the weather forecast for a city you've visited too many times. He wasn't surprised. I told him what had happened, all of it, and there was a pause on the line. And then he said quietly, "Tell me what you need." I told him I needed him to change the locks on the house we owned jointly back in our home state, where my parents had a spare key they had never been asked to return. He didn't argue. He didn't ask why or suggest I was overreacting. He just said, "Done. I'll handle it today." That was the moment I remembered why I had married him. My dad found out about the locks within 48 hours. I don't know how. Maybe Renee drove by. Maybe a neighbor mentioned the locksmith. What I know is that my phone rang at 7 a.m. 2 days later, and it was a number I didn't recognize, and when I answered it, it was a police officer. Local jurisdiction back home. He was calm and professional and slightly apologetic in his tone. He told me that my father had filed a report claiming I had stolen property from the family home and changed the locks to prevent access. He asked if I could clarify the situation. I told him the house was in my name and my husband's name. I told him we had never given anyone legal permission to hold a key. I told him I could provide documentation within the hour. The officer thanked me and told me the matter was closed. And before he hung up, he said, "And I will never forget this, ma'am. I'm sorry you're dealing with this." My own father had called the police on me over a lock. Over $8. Over the audacity of not handing over $8,000 to a man who couldn't drive to watch me graduate. I took a week before I made any decisions. I didn't call anyone. I didn't respond to texts. I let the noise run itself out. And when it got quiet, I sat down and wrote 3 separate messages. One to my dad, one to my mom, one to Renee. They were not angry messages. They were not long. I told each of them the same thing in slightly different words. I told them that I loved them, that I wished them well, and that I was no longer available in the way I had previously been. No explanations, no list of grievances, no door left open for negotiation. I haven't spoken to any of them since. That was 14 months ago. People ask me sometimes if I'm sad about it, and the honest answer is that I was sad for a long time before the silence, not after it. I grieved that family for years while I was still sitting at their table. By the time I walked away, the morning was already finished. What I feel now is something I didn't expect. It feels like space, like a window opened in a room that had been shut too long. I breathe differently. I sleep better. I make decisions without that background noise of guilt and obligation that used to hum underneath everything I did. I built something real in the time since. Reed and I bought a bigger place. I got promoted. I have friends now who actually show up. Not because they owe me something, but because they want to be there. Last month, one of my closest friends drove 4 hours to surprise me on my birthday. She brought flowers and a cake, and we sat on my porch until midnight just talking. And I thought about that graduation auditorium, about those empty seats, and I thought, this is what it was supposed to feel like all along. The $8 was never about the money. It was the first honest thing I had said to my family in 29 years. It said everything I had never been able to put into words. It said, "I see exactly what this is." It said, "I know what I am worth to you." It said, "I am no longer pretending." My sister got married. I heard it was a nice wedding. I hope it was. I genuinely mean that. I hope Renee is happy. I hope my parents find some peace. I hold no bitterness toward them. Not really, because bitterness would mean I was still waiting for something from them. And I stopped waiting a long time ago. I'm Tori Barrett. I'm 29 years old. I sent my dad $8, and it was the best financial decision I ever made.